The day was grey and bitter cold, and the dogs would not take the scent. The big black bitch had taken one sniff at the bear tracks, backed off, and skulked back to the pack with her tail between her legs. The dogs huddled together miserably on the riverbank as the wind snapped at them. Chet felt it too, biting through his layers of black wool and boiled leather. It was too bloody cold for man or beast, but here they were. His mouth twisted and he could almost feel the boils that covered his cheeks and neck growing red and angry. I should be safe back at the wall, tending the bloody ravens and making fires for old Maester Aemon. It was the bastard, Jon Snow, who had taken that from him. Him and his fat friend Sam Tarly. It was their fault he was here, freezing his bloody balls off with a pack of hounds deep in the haunted forest. Welcome back to Archer's World of Literature. I don't know why I just did that, but I'm back. I am alive. I am here. I'm back, ready to make some videos. It's been a while since the last one. Been probably about a week or so since my last video. I was feeling a bit under the weather, a bit sick a few days ago, and so as a result, I couldn't do a live stream I had planned and some stuff, and just I had a bit of a halt. Today, anyway, that's off topic. Today, I finally did it. I got my way through it. Today we're going to be doing a spoiler review. So we're going to be doing George R.R. Martin, A Storm of Swords, which is the third book in A Song of Ice and Fire. So I actually read it in these beautiful Harper Voyager editions that I really enjoy. Not sure which one's going to show on the camera in the right order, but it's split up into two parts in these editions. So we've got these really nice landscape covers on the front. So this is we've got Steel and Snow, and then Blood and Gold. But it is the one book, so I'm going to be talking about the one book. So the full thing, which is A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. So, firstly, we're going to talk about what this book is about. Storm of Swords is following off, pretty much directly from A Clash of Kings. Continues straight from where that left off. We're following... I've got all... Sorry, my cat is pulling a very funny position. Winnie... Hang on, I'm going to insert a photo of what she's doing right now because it's quite cute. I'm looking at this as I'm recording. Storm of Swords follows, I got all the POV characters listed up here. It mainly follows 10 main characters. So that is Catelyn, we've got Sansa, Arya, Bran, Jon Snow, Samwell Tarly. We get the introduction of his POVs and they were amazing. Continue with Tyrion, one of the best POV characters in the series. Jaime Lannister. We have Davos, which... I'll get into my thoughts on the Davos POVs. And then we have, obviously, Daenerys Targaryen, Stormborn of the Targaryen dynasty. And then, we've got a prologue character and an epilogue character that aren't, a main sort of character. All right, so we're loosely going to talk about all the POVs and, roughly what ends up happening in this book. So firstly, we end up following... Let's get this list back up. So we're following Lady Cat. We're following Lady Catelyn Stark, whose chapters I didn't really enjoy all that much because a lot of the time she's sort of just complaining. She's had a lot of stuff happen to her. Fair enough. A lot of the time she's kind of just complaining. She's sort of... she's going to Riverrun. She's observing Robb, who's obviously her son, who's king in the north. Because he's maturing a lot faster than she's sort of ready for, she's kind of complaining about that as well. She's sort of trying to give him advice that he doesn't really listen to or has better advice for because, he's been forced with all his responsibilities. And anyway, so Catelyn ends up getting taken along to the twins when they're trying to marry off. Edmure ends up getting set up to a fray after Robb meets Jean Westerling, who is his wife at the moment, and he broke his oath to marry a Frey, so they decided to do it with Kat's brother instead. So Kat gets taken to the twins, and that is where the fateful Red Wedding happens, and that was just absolutely insane. I've seen the TV show, so I know about it, but reading that, insane. Red Wedding is where, they're at this nice wedding and everything's okay, and then Catelyn sees that someone's got chainmail. One of the Freys has got chainmail under his cloak, and so she knows that something's about to happen. And the Freys let loose arrows and knives and secret hidden assassins and stuff, and they kill pretty much every Stark there, every Tully that's there. They went all out. So Catelyn did die, Robb died, Great John died. I think Edmure may have as well. It was crazy. It was really big, but yeah, so Catelyn's POVs ended there. And so then we also have Sansa in A Storm of Swords, one of the POV characters. Sansa's still trapped, sort of kind of passively aggressively being held captive at King's Landing. She ends up making friends with Marjorie Hightower when they come in, and then she sort of gets proposed with the dream of, going off to with the Hightowers and marrying one of their kids, and living her beautiful life off in is it Highgarden? Highgarden. Yeah, I think so. God, there's a lot in this book. I feel like I've done a pretty good job, but if I misplace some names or whatever, there's a lot to remember in the series. To Highgarden, but then Cersei ends up turning around and goes, "You're going to marry Tyrion. You're going to marry Tyrion." And that was just like a huge, massive thing, because it was super awkward, because Sansa's I think she's like 12 or 13 or maybe 14. And, Tyrion is a middle-aged, imp, right? He's the imp. So it was really, really awkward. But then anyway, so Sansa's chapters bleed into the Purple Wedding, which was where Joffrey is poisoned at his wedding with Marjorie. And that was just from the first time you read about Joffrey in a Game of Thrones, it's like, you want this guy dead. And the fact that he lasted through 3,500 pages was just 3,500 pages too much of Joffrey. So to see him go was amazing. Catelyn, Sansa's chapters kind of go into that. And then she's actually smuggled out of King's Landing with Ser Dontos, which is the fool of King's Landing who ends up trying to help get her out. Then we find out he was actually paid to help Sansa get out by Peter, by Littlefinger. And then we still don't really know what his grand plan is, because Peter Littlefinger is he's a devious guy, and he's got a lot of plans. And we never know fully what that plan is. He's constantly plotting. Peter ends up taking Sansa to the Fingers for a little bit of a stop. And then Sansa thinks, she's going to Riverrun. Sansa thinks she's going to be with her mum again and with her family. And then Peter ends up taking her to the Eyrie, because part of Peter's mysterious plan is to marry Lysa Arryn. We also don't really know what all that's about. So that's where that goes. And then Peter ends up pushing, Lysa ends up finding Sansa hanging out with Peter or whatever, and then making some stuff up about hey, you kissed him, or weird stuff, because she's sort of a little bit deluded. And then Peter comes out and then gives her a kiss and pushes her out the moon door, instead of, because she was trying to push Sansa out of the moon door off the Eyrie, and then Peter pushes Lysa off, and it was just the best, because she's also, now that Joffrey went, she sort of took the role as most annoying character. That's sort of where Sansa's chapters end. Arya's caught up with the Brotherhood without banners, and she's still, like all the other Starks in this book, apart from Robb, they're all trying to go back home. They're all trying to go to Riverrun to find their mum, to be together again. So Arya has been trying to do that in every group that catches her. Keeps saying, "We're going to take you to your mum, we're going to take you to your mum, we're going to take you to your mum." And then someone else captures her, or she ends up getting swept away, or they're lying, or whatever. So that's what she's doing. She's sort of bouncing around from group to group. And then the Hound is hanging around for some reason, because he was found in the bushes and some Brotherhood stuff happened. Won't go into detail. But she ends up running off because she was having a panic attack or whatever with the Brotherhood without banners. And then she runs straight into the arms of the Hound. And so the Hound takes her as the final person in this journey to, the final person to sort of take Arya captive. But then the Hound is saying I can actually get a pretty good ransom, a pretty good reward if I do take Arya to her mum. And also it's sort of he's left King's Landing, so he can't really go back there. I think, because he doesn't want to be around his brother, the Mountain. And so they end up sort of going back and forth. And then they find out that her mum is going to be at this wedding at the Twins. So they go to the Twins, and then they end up being there for the Red Wedding. They're out the front, and then they see it's all burning, and they see, the betrayal. So they sort of find out that Robb and Kat are probably dead. So they go off. And then we have Bran's chapters. So Bran is still being taken up north by Mira and Jojen Reed, who they're part of, they're Crannogmen, right? So they live kind of in the north, but kind of in the marshes. They're sort of frog hunt people or whatever. Anyway, he's still going up with them and Hodor and stuff. They're trying to find the three-eyed raven. Which is on the other side of the wall, so their journey has them going up, and they're trying to get there. They end up making a pit stop just below the wall in a spot that's called the Gift, which is kind of like a no man's land sort of thing in front of the wall. They end up making a pit stop there, and then they actually see Jon when he's with the wildlings, because Jon ends up sort of being a spy amongst the wildlings, and they climb over the wall. Long story, but he actually ends up seeing Jon, and I think he only ends up finding out that it was Jon when he's going into a wolf dream where he's with Summer, and he sees John, when he's actually summer, when he's sleeping, and that was really, really cool. And then they end up moving off because that's when John reveals that he was like a traitor or a spy to the wildlings, and so John runs off to the wall, and the wildlings disperse. Then they end up getting to the wall, and they're at one of like the abandoned posts, and then they hear some noises and stuff, and it's actually Sam and Gilly and Gilly's baby come up out of this well, like this underground tunnel system under the wall, and then they they take Bran and Jojen and Mira and Hodor through this tunnel, and they tell them how to find Cold Fingers or something like that, because I think he's got like frostbite or grayscale or whatever, but we still don't know who that is, but I've got a funny feeling. I do have a feeling. But they get taken over there, and that's sort of, I think, where Bran's chapters mainly kind of end. So John has quite a lot of POVs in Storm of Swords, and his chapters are absolutely nuts. They're mental. So at the end of Clash of Kings, that's when he got sent over to sort of be a spy amongst the wildlings. Corran Halfhand tells him to kill him in front of the wildlings to get their trust, and just go there and try and learn everything, see if they can find any information about the Horn of Jormungand, anything like that, to be a spy. And so at the start of Storm of Swords, John is just doing regular spy business. He meets Mance Rayder, and he meets a few other dudes. More importantly, this is when John starts to build up a relationship with Egret. Egret is one of the wildlings, and he ends up sort of breaking his oath with her and falling in love with her. Mance sends them to climb the wall. They go over the wall, and then when they're over the wall, John ends up sort of going back to Castle Black and revealing that it was all just a trick, and he ends up killing a couple of them, and Ygritte actually like shoots him in the leg with an arrow and stuff because she really loved him and felt kind of betrayed. He essentially just runs off on her, and then when he comes back to the wall, we've got the battle I'm just going to name it Battle of Castle Black. I'm not entirely sure if that's what it's called, but that's when the raiders who were closely behind him that had made it over the wall with him, that's when they come up and they try and take Castle Black. They don't succeed, and then that was an insane thing because they burn down the staircase on the wall, and it's all a mess. Pretty much directly after that, we have the battle for the wall, and that's when all of the raiders who have slowly been coming down from the north to the wall to try and storm through and take it down and stuff. That's when throughout the whole book, that's what they've been trying to do, and then during this part. Directly next, they're all finally there. They've got giants. They've got these huge turtles, which are like battering rams essentially. Stannis, right? Who would have thought? Stannis ends up helping them win the battle when they thought they were about to lose it. And so with Stannis's men at the wall, John, because Mormont died, Commander Mormont, he died when he got betrayed by his own men. But they're looking for a new Lord Commander of the Night's Watch because, he's dead, right? And then with some nice trickery and some secret work by Sam, John ends up getting voted. So John is now the Lord Commander of the Watch at the end. So like I said earlier, in this book, Storm of Swords, we get the first introduction of Sam. We get Samwell's POVs, and his POVs are amazing. They're so good. He is basically struggling through the Battle of the Ring. I'm really struggling with this video. I'm not going to lie. I'm really struggling because there's so much to remember. It's all here, but to get it from here to here it's not working with me. But they're at this ring above the wall, and it was a battle where they got attacked by the others and some of the whites and stuff. And anyway, so Sam's struggling through all that. He ends up becoming lost for quite a little bit, and then he ends up regrouping. He actually kills a white, so he gets called Sam the Slayer is his nickname, and he doesn't like it because he's sort of a shy, humble guy. But he's just one of the best characters in the series. It's so good to read his POVs. He ends up regrouping, and then they go to Craster's place. They're living under Craster's roof for a little bit. Craster is one of the wildlings who sort of hosts some of the crows, as he calls them, some of the guys of the Night's Watch. He's not really associated with Mance Rayder. They end up going there, and he actually ends up taking Gilly after he leaves there. Gilly and her baby, because Craster gets killed and crazy stuff. And then Sam, we don't really hear from him for a little bit, and then obviously in the Bran sections we find out that he had met Cold Hands and helped and found out that Bran was trying to go and find him. So they help Bran get there, and then Sam sort of comes back quite later in the book. He's back at Castle Black, and he helps orchestrate Jon become Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and he's trying to figure out what he's going to do with Gilly, because, you know, he can't really host her if he's going to remain a man of the Night's Watch, right? Because that's one of his oaths, is to father no children, and be no person's husband, anything like that. Next up, we got Tyrion. Tyrion's POVs are always a great time. Tyrion's kind of struggling with the reign of Joffrey because Joffrey doesn't like him, and he has like the best advice. But we have Tywin. Tywin comes back and sort of takes his position as Hand of the King, and Tyrion's not very happy about that because Tyrion's sort of like, oh, I'm the only one who's going to be able to like save Joffrey from dooming us all. And so Tywin kind of makes assigns Tyrion as Master of Coin, so he's kind of like the finance manager of the city. Through Tyrion's POVs, where you sort of see him still struggling with having to marry, being forced to marry Sansa, and him dealing with, you know, her not really wanting him because, you know, she's a kid, and him also kind of knowing it's wrong, but really awkward, like I said. But then also trying to deal with, you know, Shay, who's like his woman that he is in love with, but she's not of any royal house or anything like that, so she's not really accepted. So he's still trying to deal with how he can see her and make a life with her, whilst, you know, the face value is him and Sansa. Like I said, he is accused of murdering Joffrey when, you know, Joffrey is poisoned at his wedding. And then through this book, we have this huge trial, this massive trial. And, you know, they've got witnesses coming forth and stuff, and they have, you know, everyone's against Tyrion. Everyone thinks Tyrion did it. Cersei's trying to get him, like, hung or executed. And then anyway, you know, he's held captive and stuff, and he demands trial by battle. And Oberyn Martell, who's from Dorne, he's got this beef with a mountain. He's got this beef with Tywin, and so he actually comes to Tyrion before like the final day and says, "Hey, I'll be your champion. Because I want to kill the mountain." Yeah, so I think like the last we hear of Tyrion, or one of the last parts, sort of is they have this battle, and Oberyn ends up getting killed. He gets his like head crushed in by the mountain skull. He's doing really, really well, but he also managed to poison the mountain and like do some damage to the mountain because his spear that he uses is usually like tipped with poison. And so we're sort of not really sure what the fate of Tyrion's going to be, because it was kind of like a bit of a stalemate, right? But yeah, Tyrion's chapters were awesome. And then we have Jaime's chapters. So Jaime has a huge journey in this book. Kat is using Brienne to take Jaime back to King's Landing in exchange for her daughters. For Sansa, and she still thinks that Arya could possibly be at King's Landing. So he's actually set loose at the start, and Brienne's like, he's in chains and stuff, but he's taken by Brienne back to King's Landing. Well, that's what's trying to happen. But they get attacked a couple of times, and so they end up getting taken captive by the Brave Companions because they recognize, hey, look, it's Jaime Lannister, and he's being captured, right? And then he actually he cuts off Jaime's hand, and I actually forgot that happened in the show, to be honest. They cut off Jaime's hand because the leader, Vargo Hoat, is kind of known for doing that, like taking people's limbs and stuff. It was like super creepy stuff, but that happens, and then they end up getting taken to Harrenhal, and then they end up getting taken to Roose Bolton, who's sort of leading Harrenhal at the moment. And he ends up helping Jaime get back to King's Landing on his way, because he's got a few other like ulterior motives as well, similar to Peter. He's a smart guy. So Jaime ends up going back to King's Landing with Brienne, and he's actually appointed as the commander of the Kingsguard. So he's back there. Things are kind of going well. Him kind of going there and finding out that, you know, his son, right? So Joffrey is dead. It's kind of put a little bit of a halt in his relationship with Cersei, and that was kind of like his big excitement for going back home, right? That's like what he wanted. So that's kind of the last we hear of Jaime. Now, Davos Seaworth. Okay, so we had his POVs in Clash of Kings, and we continued. Very fortunate to have Davos' POVs. This is the one thing I really don't like about this book. And I know it's like, you know, it's cool to see different people's perspectives, but I just did not like him as a character. I still don't like him as a character because he is still alive. I find him boring. I'm not going to lie. Like, everyone else's POVs I love. Like, apart from Kat sometimes, but like the Red Wedding, she got, you know, that stuff happened. So I liked those. But he's the only one where it's like every single chapter I'm like, oh, really? Like, I'm not mad. Like, I'm still happy to read the book and keep going, but I'm really sort of like, oh, damn. Davos chapter. Like, it's that time of the book again, right? Don't really like him. He's kind of, you know, he's this smuggler turned lord by Stannis. He's sort of there trying to deal with Melisandre, and he doesn't really understand this Lord of the Light stuff. And he's sort of there trying to advise Stannis. Stannis makes him his hand, which is kind of funny because, he's got no fingers. But that happens, and then I don't know. I don't really have anything to say about Davos. But that's pretty much, because Davos doesn't really do anything. It's just Dragonstone. It's just Davos being like, oh, Stannis is being manipulated, boohoo. That's all that happens. Daenerys. I love Daenerys' chapters. I love Daenerys' POV so much. Even though in this book, most of them did feel kind of the same. Every chapter, she's going to the cities in the east, in the Freelands, and the free cities, and she is freeing slaves. She's trying to build this army. And in Storm of Swords, she starts that army off with purchasing the Unsullied. And so she purchases the Unsullied, which are a bunch of eunuch warriors. She buys all of those, 10,000 of the dragons are starting to get kind of big. So she ends up making a trade. She's going to spend a bunch of money, give her ships away. But also they want her dragons. And she ends up making this so cool. She tricks them. And so she ends up giving the guy who owns the Unsullied, because he's a bit of an asshole, right? He's a bit of a prick. She gives him the chains that are holding all the dragons. So he's holding one of her dragons in the chain, and Daenerys officially has been passed ownership of the Unsullied. And then the dragon's pulling on the chain, and he can't control it. And he's like, Daenerys, why isn't this working? And she's like, you can't control dragons. You can slave all these people if you want, but you can't make a slave out of a dragon. And then she's like, Dracarys. And she, Dracarys, right, burns down all the slave master and all these other masters. And then because the Unsullied are officially hers, they've been passed into her ownership, they listen to her and her only. So she just says, kill everyone who's got a whip in their hand, kill everyone who's holding a slave, or kill all the people here except for people on our side, and don't kill children or women, but kill everyone here who's a slave master. So she's got these 10,000 Unsullied, just killing everyone, and the dragons are burning stuff down. It was insane. And then after that, she's slowly going through all these free cities, Meereen, a couple of the other ones. She doesn't really go through that many, but I think she's got about six chapters in this book. So she's freeing slaved people and making them. She becomes their mother. So essentially, when she's walking through the camps of these thousands and thousands of people she's freed, they're like, mother, you freed us. Mother, you freed us. But that's pretty much all the POVs in this book. I'm kind of going to talk very, very briefly about what makes this book good. I don't really have anything to say about what makes this book not so good. It's pretty much all good things, apart from, like I said, the Davos chapter is probably the only thing I would change. However, what I would say makes this book great, it's easily the best Song of Ice and Fire book, easily. And I haven't even read the final two so far. This is the best one. It's going to be the best one. It's huge. It's absolutely massive. I mean, if you look at this, look, it's huge. This is both of them together. It's absolutely humongous. It's about total probably 1,200, 1,300 pages. But it's the best because so much stuff happens. So many huge story and plot changing things happen. Big things are happening that are changing the scope of this world forever and this story forever. But I think that being one of them, the first thing I'd say is just crazy stuff happens, which is a pretty average way of putting it. I'd probably say a lot of stories are finally wrapped up here. And I have heard with Feast for Crows and Dance the Dragons, I've heard it introduces a few new POVs and it sort of starts up a few new things. There are a few things that can pick up from Storm of Swords that can continue in Feast for Crows, but this wraps up a lot of storylines that have started all the way back from Game of Thrones. And it's not just that people have been killed. It's not just that Cat dies and Joffrey dies and stuff, but it wraps up a lot of things. It's Jaime was gone for ages. He was wandering around Westeros and now he's back home. That's wrapped up. Tywin was, running around and stuff for ages. Now he's back home. It's done. Sansa has finally escaped King's Landing. She's been held captive there, passively, aggressively. Like I said, she's been held captive there since A Game of Thrones, since Ned died. She escapes. She finally escapes. We finally sort of find out what Peter's been up to. We actually end up finding out that Peter was the one that orchestrated Jon Arryn's death. We still don't know why, but we find out that big mystery, who did it. We all thought, it was Cersei and Jaime and stuff, but no. It was Peter. We still don't know why, but that's finally been answered, who done it, right? We know it's him. That's what I would say. It wraps up so many POVs. Jon's finally back at the wall, and Jon comes out of the ashes of hanging out with the wildlings as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. It's just so much stuff happens. Stannis has finally left Dragonstone, and he's at the wall now, and like he's the new king of the North essentially, because Rob's out of the picture, and he's actually in the North. It just wraps up so many things. That's what I would say makes this book amazing. Not so good. Davos. That's pretty much all I got to say about it. This has been a very difficult video to film. I'll be honest with you guys. I finished it about a week ago and stuff, and everything's still fresh in my mind. But when it comes to filming a video on a book that's 1,300 pages and is so big and it's epic fantasy and it's just, there's so much going on, it's very difficult. So if you notice a lot of cuts in this video, it's because I was just like looking up names and trying to remember, and nothing was coming to the tip of my tongue. So it's been a hard and difficult video for me to film, considering how much I love this book. This book is a 5 out of 5. This is absolutely mental. If you're like, oh, I've read Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, whatever, they were okay, or like I like them, but I'm not sure if I'm going to continue, because Storm of Swords will blow your mind. Absolutely mental. That's all I've got to say. My camera is about to run out of battery. I hope you like this video. It's mainly, when it comes to spoiler reviews, like this is mainly just me like getting it down on paper, on video. It's like I've read this. It's more for me to keep track of my own thoughts and stories and stuff for the next books. I'm not expecting this video to do all that well because, like I said, it's a spoiler review. But if you have read it and you've watched all the way through, comment your favorite POVs in the book, because mine are definitely Daenerys, Jon, and Samwell probably, and Tyrion of course, and Jaime. Jaime's was really good as well. Comment your favorite POVs, comment your favorite scenes, your favorite arcs, your favorite stories in A Storm of Swords. And let me know if you've read the next two, because I'm still yet to do it. I'm going to be finishing the series or up to date with it by the end of the year. So yeah, that's kind of all I have to say about this. Different format, but let me know if you like it. So as I always like to say, thank you so much for watching firstly, and as I always like to say, keep reading and peace out.